There is a single sentence buried inside the New York Times report published this morning, sourced to people directly familiar with the operation, independently confirmed by CIA officials, and described in precise detail by 2 Israeli intelligence insiders who were briefed directly on the strike. That tells you more about how Khamenei was killed than any satellite image, any bomb damage assessment, or any official military press release ever will. The sentence is this: intelligence showed that Khamenei would be at that meeting, according to one of them, and the strike was timed accordingly. Read that again. Not that American surveillance drones had mapped his location, not that signals intelligence had intercepted his private communications, not that artificial intelligence systems had analyzed years of his movement patterns and predicted where he would be. Intelligence showed he would be at that meeting, and the strike was timed accordingly. That is the specific operational language, the precise, unmistakable vocabulary of a human source, a person, someone inside that meeting or someone who knew about that meeting before it happened, who transmitted to the CIA the single piece of intelligence that 35 years of the most expensive and sophisticated surveillance architecture in the entire history of human conflict had never previously been able to produce, where Khamenei would physically be, at what specific time, on what specific Saturday morning. According to the New York Times, the CIA had been actively tracking Khamenei's location for months and had learned through its intelligence network that a meeting of Iran's most senior officials was scheduled for Saturday morning at a leadership compound located in the heart of Tehran. The American intelligence agency passed this information directly to Israel, which used it to plan and execute the strike. Here's the detail that changes everything about what this operation tells us. Washington and Tel Aviv had originally planned to launch their strikes against Iran under the cover of darkness at night. But officials in both governments adjusted the entire strike plan based on CIA intelligence that arrived close enough to the launch window that the whole operation could still be redesigned around a Saturday morning daytime target. Think about what that single operational detail actually reveals. You do not redesign a major coordinated military operation in the hours before launch because a satellite passed over something interesting. You do not rewrite a strike package, recall your air assets, recalculate fuel loads, and shift from a nighttime to a daytime attack window because an algorithm flagged an anomaly. You do that. You only do that because a human source you have absolute confidence in told you something specific enough to act on immediately. A specific meeting, a specific location, a specific time. The IDF confirmed it struck 2 locations simultaneously. 40 senior Iranian leaders killed within 60 seconds across both sites. The strike did not happen because America got fortunate with a surveillance satellite pass. The strike happened because someone who had direct access to Khamenei's personal schedule, someone inside the 4 or 5 people who knew about that Saturday morning meeting before it occurred, chose to transmit that information upward through a network that carried it to the CIA, which carried it to the IDF, which rebuilt its entire strike architecture around a daytime window that Iran had never anticipated and never prepared for, because Iran's own security doctrine assumed its internal protocols made daytime precision targeting of its leadership structurally impossible. The source document that Backdoor Economics has been tracking for 6 weeks said exactly this. The New York Times confirmed it this morning. And then Donald Trump, in a Truth Social post celebrating Khamenei's death as justice, told the entire world something that no intelligence agency would ever voluntarily disclose: that Iranian security forces and IRGC members were already reaching out to American authorities, seeking immunity, not surrendering, not defecting, seeking immunity. That is the specific legal framing of people who have already taken actions that require protection from prosecution, who are actively negotiating the terms of their cooperation before their role becomes publicly known. The insider who gave the CIA the meeting location is not isolated. He is not alone. He is one thread inside a network. The source document draws a direct and documented parallel between Khamenei's death this Saturday and every previous major Israeli intelligence success against Iranian and Iranian-backed leadership over the past 6 years. And that parallel has a single consistent element, one detail that every Western outlet has reported around, but none has stated directly as the central operational fact. Qasem Soleimani. 3 people knew the details of his travel to Baghdad in January 2020. Hassan Nasrallah. A small and controlled number of people knew the precise location of the tunnel complex in Beirut's Dahieh suburb, where he convened his most sensitive operational meetings. Ismail Haniyeh. The Tehran guest house where he was staying the night he was killed was known only to a handful of people inside Iran's own security apparatus. And now Khamenei. A meeting of 4 or 5 of the most security-conscious individuals inside the most security-conscious government structure in the Middle East. A meeting whose location was transmitted to the CIA with enough advance warning that a nighttime operation was redesigned into a Saturday morning strike. The pattern is not coincidence. The pattern is a method. And the pattern produces a single question that Iran's own internal security services are asking inside their own secure facilities right now. Who among the survivors knew? Ali Larijani emerged as Iran's most senior surviving official within hours of the strike. The same man who appeared on Khamenei's succession list 6 days before the strike. The same man who was present in that restricted leadership meeting and survived it when 40 others across 2 locations did not. The same man who is now publicly vowing to stab America in the heart, while simultaneously being the individual that Washington sanctioned in January 2026 for allegedly directing a deadly crackdown on anti-government protests, even as he was simultaneously overseeing Iran's nuclear deal negotiations with the United States, sanctioned and negotiating at the same time, present in the meeting and alive afterward, appearing on the succession list less than a week before the strike that eliminated everyone positioned above him. The source document does not accuse Larijani. What it does is note the pattern. The pattern that every Israeli intelligence success over the past 6 years follows without exception. The pattern of the survivor who knew. The pattern that produces exactly the question that Iran's Revolutionary Guards are now asking behind closed doors, and that will determine the internal political trajectory of whatever government emerges from the Succession Council currently governing under continuous bombardment. Trump wrote on Truth Social that Khamenei was unable to avoid America's intelligence and highly sophisticated tracking systems. He did not say the bombs were accurate. He did not say the pilots were skilled. He said Khamenei was unable to avoid their intelligence, placing the weapon that ended 35 years of Iranian theocratic leadership not inside an Israeli F-35, but inside the CIA's human intelligence network embedded within Iran's highest security structures, whose existence he simultaneously confirmed publicly while urging Iranian security forces to seek immunity from prosecution. The CIA recruitment video in Farsi, posted to social media in February, was not propaganda for a future operation. The Dutch diplomat arrested for distributing that content on Starlink in January was not acting in advance of a hypothetical campaign. These were the visible surface of an active, ongoing, and already producing human intelligence recruitment effort inside the most restricted circles of the Iranian state. The operation that killed Khamenei on Saturday morning was not the beginning of that effort. It was the product of it. Iran's official IRNA news agency confirmed that a 3-person council consisting of President Pezeshkian, Judiciary Chief Mohseni Ejei, and a Guardian Council jurist will temporarily assume all leadership duties until a new supreme leader is formally elected. These are not military commanders. They are legal and clerical figures whose entire institutional authority derives from the same constitutional document that Khamenei himself administered for 35 years. They are governing a country that has declared 40 days of mourning under Shia Islamic tradition while simultaneously firing its 6th wave of missile strikes against 27 American military bases, mining the Strait of Hormuz, attacking a commercial oil tanker that had Iranian crew members aboard, and watching its streets fill with crowds, some mourning, some celebrating, all of them uncertain about what happens next. Russia convened an emergency UN Security Council session. China issued a statement calling for restraint. Neither has crossed the line from strategic partnership into active military co-belligerence, and that single decision, made in Moscow and Beijing, is the variable that most directly determines whether this conflict remains regional or expands into a confrontation between nuclear powers. Neither government has concluded that Iran's survival is worth that cost. Yet, at the emergency UN Security Council session convened Sunday morning, Secretary General Antonio Guterres delivered what historians will likely remember as the most precise single-sentence summary of everything that happened in the 36 hours between Saturday's 2:30 a.m. strike announcement and Sunday morning's confirmation of Khamenei's death. He said diplomacy had been squandered. Military action carries the risk of igniting a chain of events that no one can control in the most volatile region of the world. A chain of events that no one can control, spoken by the most senior international official on Earth, at an emergency session of the institution whose entire foundational purpose is to prevent exactly this kind of cascading escalation, describes precisely the operational environment the world entered on Saturday morning. Not a surgical strike with defined endpoints and a diplomatic off-ramp built in. Not a managed escalation with clear red lines and agreed ceilings. A chain, each link generating the next, each retaliation triggering a counter-retaliation, each government's domestic political constraints making de-escalation harder rather than easier with every passing hour. Trump confirmed the bombing will continue throughout the week, or as long as necessary, toward what he described as peace throughout the Middle East and indeed the world, indefinite duration, maximalist objective, continuous bombardment of a nation of 90 million people who have just entered a 40-day period of institutionalized religious grief for the man those bombs killed. Saturday's strikes targeted 24 Iranian provinces, killing at least 21 people, according to Iranian Red Crescent reports. Among those strikes, Israel hit 2 schools. At the Shajreh Tayyeba Girls Elementary School in the southern city of Minab, 108 children were killed. 108 girls who arrived at school on a Saturday morning in a provincial city that appears on no legitimate military targeting list, because there are no military targets in Minab that justify killing children. 2 additional students were killed at a school east of Tehran. Those 108 children are the fact that will outlast every succession council announcement, every stock market calculation about the Strait of Hormuz closure, every strategic theory about regime change, and every political statement from every capital on earth. They are the reason the streets of Karachi are burning. They are the reason Baghdad's green zone is under siege. They are the fact around which 40 days of mourning in Iran will be organized. Not mourning for the supreme leader alone, but for 108 girls who did not come home from school. That is the fact the Secretary General meant when he said no one can control what comes next. Not because of geopolitical miscalculation, because of 108 names. Fresh Israeli strikes hit the heart of Tehran on Sunday. Iranian missiles struck near Jerusalem, both capitals under fire simultaneously, while 150 commercial tankers sit stalled outside the Persian Gulf, while the Strait of Hormuz remains mined, while Tokyo prepares to open its markets to a world in which the CIA has publicly confirmed it maintains human sources inside Iran's highest security structures, in which the supreme leader is dead, in which the constitutional succession mechanism is governing under bombardment, and in which the President of the United States has promised continuous, uninterrupted military operations for as long as it takes to achieve peace for the entire world. The insider who gave the CIA the meeting location altered the trajectory of the Middle East with a single encrypted transmission. The chain of events that transmission set in motion, 40 days of mourning declared, 27 American bases under attack, the strait conditionally closed, 108 girls dead in Minab. That chain is exactly what the Secretary General meant. Nobody controls it now. This is backdoor economics. What you just watched was not a news summary. It was an autopsy of how power actually moves. Through human sources, through encrypted messages, through survivors who walk out of meetings that kill everyone else, through presidents who confirm intelligence operations on social media while urging cooperation, through children who had nothing to do with any of it. The chain the Secretary General described is live. It is moving. And we will follow every link of it here. Subscribe to my Backdoor Economics. Share this video to every contact you have. The CIA had a human source in Khamenei's final meeting. 40 senior Iranian leaders were killed in 60 seconds. 108 children died in a school in Minab. The Succession Council is governing under bombardment. And Tokyo opens in the morning. Backdoor Economics. See you at the next door.